Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us for the content creation for social media workshop tonight. I'm Kelly from Business Tasmania, and I'm joined tonight by Taihlaura from Kingthing, who will actually present on content creation for social media and everything you dreamt of even knowing. What I'll do very shortly is I'm going to take a little bit of your time tonight to actually share some support and the great things that you can access through Business Tasmania. But to start with, I'd like to acknowledge the Tasmanian Aboriginal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. So throughout the presentation tonight, feel free to either use the Q&A function, which you'll find towards the top of your screen or under a menu if you're on a mobile, or raise your virtual hand and Josh will make your functionality live so that you can actually unmute. So what I'll do now is I'll actually share my screen and talk to you about the fabulous things that Business Tasmania can offer you. So just checking, can someone see my screen?
Yes, we can see that.
Great, perfect. Thanks to Laura. That's awesome. Perfect. So Business Tasmania, as some of you listening may well know, the fabulous things that we can offer and do for you. We're a statewide service and we actually assist everyone across Tasmania, wherever you are. If you're thinking about starting a business or if you're running a business, any size, any industry, we're your central point where you can go to access a whole host of support. You can actually call the Business Tasmania team or email them, connect through our website or many events that we run online and face-to-face. And it can be anything at all business related. You might have a question. You might just need a little bit of guidance. You might have a challenge that you really need some help with. You might have a new idea and you're excited and you want to talk it through with someone. Anything at all, you can actually come to us for anything at all business related. So it's all free and confidential, and you can call as many times as you want. And it is lovely that we do get many people contacting us over and over for different reasons throughout the journey of their business. So some examples you can see on the screen. We make connections for you right across state government and Australian government. We know what's out there and who can assist you. We run events and workshops on different topics, and tomorrow the Business Tasmania team will send you a really short survey. We'd love to hear what you thought of the event tonight, but also hear from you about what other events that you would like us to run for you, for networking or for learning, face-to-face or online. So we'd really love you to complete that survey. We have business advisors and there are digital mentors within the Australian government team that you can access, and lots of great information that you can, whatever you need, we've got it. One-stop shop, I'd say. I'd like to mention the Tasmanian Business Advice Service. So we have two service offerings. If you're thinking about starting a business or your Australian business number is less than 12 months old, you can access up to 2 hours of free advice to get you started with a new business support pilot program. Once your Australian business number is 12 months old, you can then go on to access 5 hours of free advice each financial year. And it can be around any aspect of running your business. And it's one-on-one, confidential. We contract very experienced business people to actually provide this face-to-face service for you. So we have many providers all around the state, but it's very flexible. So you can actually go to the website, the web address you'll see on the next slide, or use a QR code, and you can have a look at the bios of the advisors and you can select who you think is a good fit for you. If they're close to where you are, you can go and have a face-to-face appointment. If they're at the opposite end of the state, that's okay. You can actually have an online appointment with them as well. So lots of great options for you to access the business advice service. And you can either call the Business Tasmania team or go to the website and fill out a very short online form. I'm going to mention a couple of other examples of the support you can access through Business Tasmania, but they're not exhaustive because what we do is get to know you when you make contact and work out the very best solution to meet your needs. So if you employ staff, this is a fantastic offering, again at no cost. the Employer of Choice Assist program has been very popular over the last year. If you're employing people and you might need help with drawing up contracts, you might need help attracting people because finding staff is a real challenge. Employment contracts, you might have a performance management issue, you might want some tips on developing a great workplace culture. So anything at all to do with employing staff, you can actually access this service. So you can be seeing a business advisor for business advice, and then you can be seeing the Employer of Choice Assist program team for assistance to make your workplace as best as it can be, and make sure that you know all the things that are involved with employing staff, because once you take that leap and are employing someone, there are absolutely certain requirements that you need to make sure that you're meeting. So that's a fantastic offering. A new service launched in the last few weeks is the Workplace Relations Helpline. So by contacting our Business Tasmania team, if you have an immediate question that you'd like an answer to, we have a team that we work with who are specialised in workplace relations. So they can actually help you with an answer right then and there to a question in relation to employment, workplace policies, etc. So a great one to keep in mind for when you need it. I'd like to point out a couple of things on our Business Tasmania website. In the middle, you'll see subscribe to our newsletter, and I encourage you to do that, although I'm thinking all of you fabulous people joining tonight would be already receiving the newsletter, I've got no doubt. But if you have friends listening and they don't receive it, it's a really trusted source of information, and we've had fantastic feedback about the newsletter in that it's we never put unnecessary information. It's always important, and it's the way in which you'll find out when there are new funding programs announced. Funding programs or grant inquiries are very common because everyone wants to know if there's a grant you can apply for, of course. So this is how you find out if something new is on offer, whether that's state, Australian government, local government, we promote them all. So the newsletter is a great source of information. And funding, of course, funding and support is very prominent on our website. We are the point of contact for all Tassie funding programs, in that we know what's on offer. So you can actually either go to our website and have a look at the web page, and it's all categorised, but most people actually like to pick up the phone and talk to our team because that will save you time. You can ring up and say, oh look, Kelly, I'm running a cafe, it's been 1 year, and I'm wondering if there's something there that I can apply for to get a new coffee machine, for example. So picking up the phone, we know what's on offer, and we can help guide you in terms of understanding what's involved in putting an application in. So I just wanted to mention that because it's such a very topical inquiry reason that we receive. So funding and loans and grants and that kind of thing. So our contact details are on the screen. So please keep Business Tasmania in mind, because we go to work every day to help you as much as we possibly can. So that's just a very short overview of what the Business Tasmania service can do for you. So I'll stop sharing my screen at this point, and I'm going to hand over to Taihlaura from Kingthing, who's going to talk us through content creation for social media. And feel free to pose those questions in the Q&A. But before I should move on, Josh, does anyone have any questions for me? They've posed in the Q&A.
No questions at this stage, Kel.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Perfect. So again, I can ask your questions to Taihlaura by the Q&A or raise your virtual hand. So I'll hand over to Taihlaura. So thanks, Taihlaura.
Thank you, Kel. I'm just going to share my screen and double check that it's all working on my end now.
Okay. You can see your screen. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for taking time out of your Monday evening to come along and listen to tonight's webinar on social media. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Taihlaura and I work for Kingthing Marketing. So we are a marketing agency based in Launceston, and we are fortunate enough to work with the Digital Support Tasmania team and help deliver webinars such as this one. In tonight's workshop, we're going to cover a couple of different topics around, we're going to go through a couple of different things in regards to the content for social media. So the first thing we're going to look at is choosing the right platforms. So this is where we're going to look at where your audience is most active and then how to tailor your content for each social media platform. We're then going to look at building a content strategy and learn how to plan intentional aligned content using content pillars, brand voice, and a content calendar. We're then going to look at creating engaging content and see what's trending at the moment, from reels and carousels to behind the scenes, utilizing AI tools and how we can make sure we're intertwining authentic storytelling within that. We're also going to have a look at boosting engagement and some of the ways in which we can do that. And then look at how we can best track to see what's happening through our social channels and understand what we need to keep doing and maybe what we need to take back out of our strategy. We'll dive straight into it. So the first bit is all around choosing the best social media channels for your business. So when it comes to choosing the social media channels that are going to be the right fit for you, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. So the very first thing is to think about who is your target audience. So there's no point joining a social media platform unless your target customers are using it. So it's important to think about who you want to reach with your product and service. So if you haven't already in some of the other work that you've been doing around marketing, it is a really good idea to sit down and really refine what that target audience looks like. And maybe you do have multiple target audiences, and that's okay, but maybe understand, well, which channels are these audiences on, and maybe tailoring the content on those social media channels to those particular target audiences. The other thing to think about is, what are your goals for social media? So what is it that you're hoping to achieve by having this social media presence? Is it that you're wanting to get new customers? Are you trying to communicate with existing customers? Are you trying to position yourself as an expert in your field? Are you promoting your brand to a new market? Ideally, you're probably looking to do all of those things, but it's about working out, well, what does that look like and what's that balance to make sure that we're talking to the right customers, but also doing it in a way that's authentic and makes them feel like they're part of our community. And that's why it's really important to consider two parts when it comes to social media. So the first is organic social media. So this is where you are trying to connect with your audience. And a lot of the time, these are the people who know and love your business. So they're following your page because they want to learn more about you and your journey as a business. Whereas social media advertising, this is more of a strategy that we would use to attract new potential customers to learn about your business and what you have to offer them. So it's where we're allowed to be a little bit more salesy, and we're trying to get people to come into our organic social media and become part of our community and part of that journey, and want to hear what it is that we're doing to make a difference in whatever field we're a part of. Something I also like to have a look at is, when I understand who my target audience is and what my goals are around that, what are the competitors in the space doing? So do a little bit of research to understand what are the platforms that your competitors are using, and just have a look and see if they could work for you. Perhaps maybe they are talking to a different target audience, so this isn't always going to be in an alignment, but maybe you can start to see that they haven't posted on that channel since 2019. We have probably the exact same audience. To me, this shows that either they haven't got the time and the resources, or potentially this isn't the right social media platform to be on because they weren't seeing the results. So try and get a bit of an understanding as to what people are doing in that market, and making sure that we're on the platforms where our competitors are being active and we know our target audience is. One big consideration that I always talk about with people, though, is your time and resources. In an ideal world, we would be on absolutely every platform if our target market was on every platform. However, as a small business, often we do not have the capacity, whether that be the time, the money, the skills and energy, to do every platform the justice that it deserves. So I would strongly encourage you to pick 1 to 2 platforms and do them really, really well, and make sure you've, I guess, owning that space in terms of that platform. And then as the business grows and maybe your team grows, that's when you're going to start maybe having new team members on board that might be able to assist with those other social channels that you don't have time for. But it is really important to make sure that we're putting the time and energy into those platforms and giving them that quality over quantity approach. Are there any questions at that point?
Not so far, Taihlaura. Thank you.
No worries. So now that we've kind of understanding what we need to think about before we look at the platforms, I thought it might be a really good idea just to take a quick look at the platforms and what their core audiences are and what they're looking for on those platforms. So Facebook is ideally aimed for most audiences around that 35 to 65 plus age bracket. I do understand this is still quite a large number of people that it can speak to. So do understand that there are going to be small pockets of within that might not be as successful as others. I will say here in Tasmania in particular, we do find Facebook resonates quite well. It seems to be very much a localized platform that seems to continue to grow rather than decrease in terms of numbers. It is really popular with regional, family-orientated and older audiences. As I mentioned, though, it is used by all age groups. It's just less so with Generation Z. They might use it to connect with family and friends, but they're not using it as their preference in terms of the platforms that they utilise. So the
Laura,
key reasons.
sorry, Taihlaura, can I jump in there as you're going through? We've had a request, a special request, I guess you could say. Can you, as you're going through, where possible, can you please give some concrete examples as you're going through to help?
Can they explain a little bit further what they're after, like in terms of those common examples?
It's a good question. We'll just see what the reply is.
I do have some examples throughout tonight's presentation, but I just want to make sure that we get through the content too.
Yeah, okay, sure. I'll let you know if we have a further update or a comment.
No worries.
We do. Oh, yeah, we'll just see how it goes. We'll see how the other examples go. Thanks to Laura.
No, it's but whoever had asked that question, that's a great question and happy to give examples. So if you do want an example at any point, please just put in the Q&A what's an example of this, and more than happy to think of one if that's helpful.
That sounds great. Thank you.
So in terms of Facebook, the key reasons why people use it, it's for community connections. Local event updates do really well. So if you do have an event happening and you want to get the local people to attend that event, it's always a really good idea to make sure that we're posting about that event on Facebook itself, but also making an event through the event feature that Facebook has, and any business information. So we are finding, particularly when there are closures for businesses, and I'll use Christmas time as an example, people will actually go to the Facebook page to see when that closure period is, rather than even Google Business sometimes. So it is a really good idea as a business to post that information about your closures through the Facebook channel. Facebook is also really good for groups. So these are key for businesses with hobbies that people might be able to interact with, any advice. So we find that like parents use it for advice in groups, any local news and networking opportunities. So it definitely is a traditional style of update, and it does support that storytelling format. But we're starting to see that a lot of people will utilize it, I guess, as a trust resource when it comes to that news information. So it's just something to keep in mind. Instagram, so the core demographic for this channel is 18 to 34. It does skew slightly more to females over males on this platform, and it has a really strong presence among the urban and visually led industries. So the reasons why people love it is that they use it to discover products, follow trends, and be inspired by aesthetics. I will say this is starting to shift a little bit more as we are seeing more of that raw, authentic content starting to shine through, which is a little bit exciting because it makes it a little bit easier for those of us within a business to be able to capture that when we don't always have the option to get some of those aesthetically pleasing imagery. And that's because of the growing trend around reels and stories. So people want to interact and have what they refer to as snackable content. So this is small bite sizes of content that are a bit more raw and tell the behind the scenes of the business so that they feel like they're being part of that journey and learning about what's happening in that day-to-day of that business. We also know from Instagram that this is very influencer driven as a channel. So whether that's big influencers, micro influencers, they are predominantly using this channel to do that alongside TikTok. And that's where that trust is built, through that authentic content and that influencer-driven content. So LinkedIn, this is for those who would like to, I guess, talk to business. The core demographic utilising LinkedIn are aged between 25 to 55. They're typically professionals and business owners. And interestingly, it does skew slightly to more males as active users on LinkedIn. So the core reasons in terms of using LinkedIn is for professional development, networking, and industry insights. Business to business users want to learn, be inspired, and then grow connections. So we find posts that are vulnerable, story-driven, or value-packed perform best. And it is a really good one if you're looking to potentially grow your team, or maybe you're looking for that next superstar within your team to utilize your channel to display what it is that makes your business unique, so that it can attract them to apply when those positions do become available. TikTok, so the core demographic on this is aged between 13 to 30. But we are starting to see some rapid growth in the 35 to 44 year age group. So I think part of the shift is the fact that a lot of influencers from Instagram are starting to release content that's TikTok specific. So if they want to see that information, they do need to have a TikTok presence and start following along. So it'll be interesting to see how this platform changes. We do typically find, though, when that, and I wouldn't say that 35 to 44 is old, but when we start to find that older demographic starts to shift into some of these younger platforms, it's when the younger people tend to find a new platform to switch to. So it will be interesting to see what happens in this space. So the key reasons why people watch TikTok is for entertainment, creativity, and that authenticity. So very similar to Reels on Instagram. People love that behind the scenes, that how to, the review style content that makes it feel like they're seeing it, somebody's, I guess, thoughts and opinions straight from the camera roll. It's all about engaging with trends, it's humor, it's all of that rolled into one. And we often find that users want to be part of a community moment or a movement within the platform. And then lastly, Pinterest. So the core demographic for Pinterest is 25 to 44, with women making up around 60 to 70% of users. So there is a high interest from mums, planners, crafters, and design-led consumers on this platform. So the key reasons why people use it is to plan events, projects, or dream purchases. So those dream purchases could be things like bigger sale items such as your house or car. And so we're finding people might utilize it when they're maybe doing an interior design for their new home, or the market that I guess I've been using in the most lately is actually through the travel industry. So we know that mums are going to Pinterest to plan out their dream holiday. And so by utilising it from a tourism perspective, we're able to say, come here to Tasmania and discover what we have to offer. So the platform acts more like a search engine than a social media. So people aren't typically sitting there and being fed content through a feed. You can do that if you wish, but we do find that most people are actually searching for some sort of answer to a question that they have, or they're researching, and that's how that platform is utilised. So that's just a bit of an overview on each of the different channels there. Are there any questions at that stage?
Not at the moment, Taihlaura, thank you.
Perfect. We'll keep moving along then in terms of now we might even have a better understanding as what platforms might be right for our business, or maybe we're starting to think about, well, actually, what are the platforms that I want to use? So when you have, I guess, that thought process, from there, you would then look at making sure you're creating a content planner to serve the channels that you've selected. So a content plan is really important when it comes to social media, because what it does is it outlines what our audience are interested in seeing when they're on social media. It also aligns with our business goals and what we're trying to achieve through our social channels, and also as a way for us to share our brand story or brand narrative as it progresses and changes over the year. So what we want to do is create a content plan that, I guess, maps out the core basis of what our social posts will be about. So this can be set up in a working document, a spreadsheet. Some people use a Canva calendar and print that out and actually write when they're going to post and the themes of when they're going to post them. There's different tools such as Trello or Monday, so many different things that you can utilize to do this. It's completely individual preference as to what you prefer and what works best for you. I have an example here of a content plan that we utilize. So we actually use Google Docs, Google Sheets, which is the equivalent of Excel spreadsheets. And we come up with the content pillars within this, which I'll speak about the content pillars in a bit more detail in a second. But we'll pop the content pillars in there. We'll understand what that goal looks like, tying back into the business goal. And then we'll have some examples of the way in which we could potentially display that content. It won't actually talk about the visual aspect around it, but it will be more what that content will be based around. Alongside this, we would also then have a tab that actually maps out what days we're going to post and ensure that we're having a variety of the different content pillars that we've actually put together here.
Laura, we've got a couple of questions before you move on. You just mentioned Google just a moment ago. Will you be covering off Google Business Platform in tonight's session?
No, I'm not actually covering off Google Business tonight, but we do have some videos coming out that are solely based around Google Business and how you can utilize that as a social media platform. It is something to consider as a social media platform going forward, and I do apologise that it isn't included in part of tonight's presentation. But what I would recommend around Google Business when you're thinking about some of the content from tonight, particularly when I speak about things from Facebook that might lean back into your website, whether that be through a blog post or maybe an event that you have coming up that might have some more information based on it on your website. I would always encourage you to also think I should post that on my Google Business as a post so that people are made aware, so that it helps feed the Google feed as well with that information.
Great. And there's a different topic before we move on as well. Do you use Pinterest like Facebook with your business page, but mainly pictures, or is it different?
Great question. So the way in which I'm utilizing Pinterest for a client at the moment, as I said, is in the tourism space. So it probably is more similar to, I would say, nearly Instagram. So I would typically have a picture of a Tasmanian destination, of something that you can do here. And then I would talk about what that experience and what you can do there as a way to, I guess, entice people to come here. So it'd be strongly imagery based, but it would have a text component, I guess, talking through what that experience is to, I guess, encourage them or entice them to actually come and experience it for themselves.
Awesome. Thanks, Taihlaura.
No worries. So the first thing that we want to do when we are working on our content plan is actually start by planning out our content pillars. So content pillars are 3 to 5 key themes or topics your brand consistently posts about. These help you stay focused, save time, and build a recognizable brand story. So how do we actually go about choosing these content pillars? So the way in which I like to do it is to think about these 4 questions. So what does my audience care about? What are they curious about, struggling with, or inspired by? So it could be, are there problems that our product or service solves that potentially some of our content could assist with? Is there a person or another page that they're inspired by? What do I want to be known for? So is it our expertise? Is it the purpose of what or our product? Does that do something in particular that nobody else has, so that we want to be known for that particular product and being the innovators in that space? Alongside that, what helps move my business forward? So is it sales? Is it signups, awareness? What are those values that we offer as a business, and are they important to make sure that we're, I guess, covering off that through our content? And then what feels authentic to share? So this is a really important one that I think most of us have to really consider is, what is it from our story, our team's stories, our experiences, and our beliefs that we are comfortable to share? And we want to be able to share it in a way that is authentically us and doesn't feel forced or like we're doing it just for the sake of producing a piece of content. So I find that particular question is always important to have a really, I guess, good think about and reflect on what is actually authentic to share when it comes to my story or my team stories, and how much am I willing to share of that story. To help you get started in terms of those content pillars, I do have some different examples which are quite common content pillars that most people would typically try and cover. So I'll just go through each of these. I'll talk about what their purpose is, how you could actually share some of these things, some examples of how you could actually put that content pillar into action, and then why it works. So the first one that's quite popular as a content pillar is education. So the purpose behind this is to position your brand as a helpful expert and build trust with your audience. The types of things that we find are a great way to share this topic is how-tos and tutorials. It could be some quick tips and hacks, behind the scenes progress, for example, how a product is made, maybe some myth busting or FAQs, and then some industry insights or stats. So some examples in the way in which you could do this is you could do a post that's all on how to style our new knitwear 3 ways, or what are the top 5 apps to help plan your event, or wine pairing tips from our winemaker. So the reason that this education style of content does really well is that people save it, they share it, and they come back to it all the time. So it drives that long-term engagement and builds credibility because they can see that you are the leaders in this space with whatever that question is that you're helping them learn how to do, or that tip and that hack that you're providing them. And you'll find that people will even screenshot that and refer back to it time and time again. So it is a really, I guess, important but popular content pillar. And it's a good idea to think about, well, is that a pillar that aligns with my business, and how could we actually share some how-tos? What are some quick tips and hacks that we could share with people that might be really valuable? So the next example content pillar is entertainment. So the purpose behind this is to build an emotional connection and relatability with your audience. So this is where we're going to be making sure that we are speaking authentically to ourselves and providing people with some entertainment when they are scrolling. So this is where we might share trending audio or reel formats. We could do expectation versus reality moments. Humor or mishaps. People often align with these because it makes us feel more human to know that we're not the only ones that make mistakes when it comes to business. And also relatable or nostalgic content does really well in this entertainment space. So some examples of how you could put this into action could be a trending reel using funny audio about Monday moods, and filming your different team member through those Monday moods and how they feel when they're maybe reading their email when they first come in. The other thing that we find does really well in that entertainment space is behind the scenes bloopers. So for example, we actually film content for the Digital Support Tasmania program, and quite often when we're doing that, we do have some funny behind the scenes moments where we've stumbled on some words, and so we might then share through our reels or on a story some behind the scenes of us making mistakes and laughing at ourselves when we do make a bit of a fumble, and just showing that we are human and we can make a mistake when we are filming these presentations. The reason this works is that entertaining content really does boost that reach. So when people see something as humorous, they tend to comment, they tend to share it with their friends. And so that helps us build connection through that laughter and that familiarity, and spreads that reach further and further the more that people find it entertaining. Another example content pillar is promotional. So this purpose is to drive conversions, sales, sign-ups, or event bookings. Now, I will preface with this one, while this is probably an important content pillar for most, it would only probably be about 20% of the actual posts that you would do on social media. So there is a rule when it comes to social media called the 80-20 rule. And so that rule is that 80% of our content will be more about behind the scenes, learning about team members, doing some more of that entertainment content, versus 20% of that content being promotional, where we actually say you can buy our service or you can buy our service, you can book our service, or you can buy our product, or you can sign up here, or you can book your event ticket here. So it's important to make sure that while this isn't a content pillar that you can have on your calendar, it only makes up around 20% of the actual posts that you're outputting on the social channels. So through this content pillar, you might like to share product highlights and benefits, some special offers or limited time sales, some new arrivals or restocks, particularly if you are a e-commerce business or a retailer. You might find that posting about your new arrivals or restocks is actually a really good idea to make sure that more of your audience learn about that. I do find in some of the retail environments that I work with, when they post around that space, they do get really good engagement. So it is an important part of their strategy to have that outlined and making sure they are posting it. It could be also that you share customer testimonials or reviews, and then those upcoming events or workshops. Something to note with this particular pillar too that I didn't mention before is, while it might only be that 20% of what you're posting, there is a way in which you can do the promotional content pillar and not feel too salesy. So it doesn't need to be sign up here or you need to book the event here. You could actually talk about how a product might have changed somebody's life using that testimonial, and maybe it's them talking to camera in a reel, so it feels more raw and genuine so that they connect with it. So there are ways around this so that it doesn't feel too salesy as part of our content pillar. So the reason that this particular content pillar works is that people need to be told clearly what you sell and how it helps them. So if they've come along to your page because maybe you've turned up in their suggested feeds, or maybe a friend encouraged them to go and follow along because they thought one of your entertaining videos was of good value, it is important to understand that some of your audience might not know what you do. So it is a good idea to put it into the mix to make it really clear what it is that you are actually offering them. But that's promotional content pillar. And then the brand story. So this is to deepen the connection and authenticity and foster that community on social media. So this is probably one of the most important content pillars, in my opinion. I think it's really important, and we can see the brands that are doing really well in this particular pillar are starting to really own that space online, because they are building a community that people just want to see what they have to produce from a content perspective. They're seen as the leaders in the space, and people are then creating, I guess, similar types of content like those businesses. So this is where they might share information around the founder's story or the mission. It could be information from the staff, so it could be their birthdays or their team highlights. It could be events or milestones from their actual community that they've built, some personal thoughts or learnings along the journey, and then that user-generated content or customer shout-outs. So some examples of this content pillar in action could be things like Meet Sally, our in-house designer and dog mum. So we're introducing her role at work, but also adding that personable touch by actually showcasing what are some things outside of work that make Sally human and who she is. Another thing could be, here's why we choose to make our knitwear from merino wool, and that importance around that sustainability piece, and why it's important for us to use products like merino wool because we're supporting industries in Australia. All of that information that comes alongside that post. So the reason that this type of content works is that people connect with people. Personal content builds loyalty, trust, and emotional connection with your brand. And when we can connect emotionally with people, we're bringing them along on a journey, and they're more likely to actually engage with you when it comes to your social posts. But they're actually going to either buy your product or your service that you're offering because they believe what it is that you're actually telling them and offering to them as a service or a product. So some other details to consider once you've thought about what those content pillars might be and put some examples of how you could potentially display those content pillars is to decide how far in advance you'll plan your content. So every business is completely different. So for some people, they might have their content pillars there, and then they sit down at the start of the month and they map out exactly when those content pillars are going to be utilized and the days and times. For others, they might just start sit down on a Monday and say, I'm doing my 3 posts, what days will they be and what will those content pillars be? So making sure that they look at the week before and again looking at that week after the next week, just to make sure that they're varying up the different content pillars. But it's really up to you and your business as to what works best and how much you want to plan in advance. Alongside that, obviously, is to think about how many times a week will you be posting. So you might decide that I'm going to post as a business 3 times a week, and I'm going to do 2 posts on Instagram and 1 post on Facebook, and making sure that the content on that channel, again, is switching up the different themes and maybe tying into the content pillars that we know works best on those different channels. Now, I know a question might come up around how many times a week is it ideal to post about. Honestly, the answer is individual to every business and what works for you. It goes back to that piece earlier where I talked about time and resources. We might not always have a lot of time. So if you want to just do 1 to 2 posts a week, that's okay. I don't encourage people to actually post absolutely every single day on your channels because people don't have time for that. We also find that people are starting to, I guess, engage less with brands that post every day because they feel like they're being bombarded with content. Sorry, Kelly, do you have any questions at this point?
Not so far. No, no questions yet.
Apologies, guys. I think it's definitely hit me that it's a Monday and I've been talking all day.
Okay.
When we're thinking about mapping out a calendar, just making sure we've covered all of those different points and mapping it out so that we can cover all of the pillars that we've already spoken about. So that's all around our content pillars and I guess the way in which we would strategically think about our posting. So once we've got that into place, it's actually time to think about, well, how can I bring those content pillars to life and actually put them up on my page through pieces of content? So what do people actually want to see? So the next couple of pieces of content, it kind of ties into those pillars that we've just spoken about, but also looks at, I guess, how we can actually bring that content to life with some examples. So as I was saying, sorry, so what I've done is I guess I've created some examples of what we know is trending, and this is based off research that we get through the Social Media Examiner. We also get it from HubSpot, Sprout Social, numerous different channels where we look at, well, what's actually working out there in terms of actual content being produced. So the first is probably one of the ones that you will hear all the time. It's that authentic behind the scenes content. So what does that actually mean? So what this looks at is that people want to see the real you. They don't want to see this polished product shot. They actually want to see what's happening behind the scenes in the business. The reason it works is that it builds out trust and reliability. It really humanizes your brand because they can hear the stories that happen along the way. A case that I just saw recently was that a business actually came on and they talked about the fact that they overordered so much stock because they misunderstood what the actual instructions were from the people that were ordering, and they thought they were ordering 500 of a product, but it turns out they were ordering 5,000 of a product. And so they came on and said, look, we know we've done we've ordered way too many of these things. This is what it looked like when we turned up. You could see our shocked faces. We didn't know where we were going to put it or what we were going to do. But they filmed all this behind the scenes content of what happened throughout that process and where they made that mistake, that it made people realize that, oh, they didn't mean to do that. Maybe we should help them out and we'll purchase that product. And it actually worked in their favor because it actually helped them sell out of that particular product. So it was a way that they could take people on that journey so that they felt like they were part of it. And that's what makes people feel like they're insiders to your business. So they're little allies of that community of your business. So some examples of how you could bring this content to life is through, it could be packing some orders, it could be in the day in the life of your different team members, office dogs, coffee breaks, any little wins that you have within the team. I think the most important thing when it comes to behind the scenes content is to not overthink it. Just film on your phone, talk to the camera, create stories or reels, and the less polished always tends to do better than the ones that are really polished. So yeah, make it as raw and authentic as possible. Alongside this is that people first. So this is where we're showcasing the faces behind your business. So as I mentioned before, that human connection is key, and showing the real people who make your business tick is super important. And I think the reason that people resonate with this is that if they're emailing someone or they're picking up the phone and giving somebody a call and they know a little bit about who that person is, they can feel like they already have, I guess, a conversation that they've had with them, because they might know that that person maybe might play netball, for example, because they saw that social post. And so they can say to them, oh, you play netball. Did you have a netball game on the weekend? So it creates a bit more of an open conversation and makes them feel like they know that team member a little bit more. So this works because it builds trust and emotional connection. It makes your brand relatable and memorable. It encourages engagement by stopping the scroll, and it differentiates you with the authentic stories, not just the products or the service that you're selling. So some examples of how you could put this into action could be things such as founders sharing their why, meeting the team intros or fun facts about team members, a day in the life behind the scenes of what an actual team member does for the business and what their job actually entails. Staff picks or favourite moments from the month or from the year, and then customer shout outs featuring your team. So this could be, for example, I've seen a business where they package their orders and they actually get their team members to write who's packed that order. They do find that a lot of people will actually share the video of them opening their order and it has the name saying thank you to that person, and then they reshare that content to stories saying how much they love seeing the fact that you guys are resonating with who has actually packed that order with their name and a bit about their stories. So a tip around this is to start with stories or short videos. So if you are camera shy, which I don't blame you, most of us are, just use voiceovers or captions. Keep it casual. People crave that authenticity, so not that perfection. So don't worry if it's not perfect.
So Laura, we've got a question. Is there a good strategy for sole traders who want to create some variety in the people first space?
That is a great question. I think there's a fun way in which you could do it. And I think as a sole trader, you wear many hats. So it's not to say that you can't create content saying, I'm a sole trader, these are the different hats that I wear, and this is the hat that I'm wearing today, and this is what I did in that space. So you could create a video that could be all about the marketing that you're doing with your marketing hat on as a sole trader. But then the next day you could do, or a couple of days later, you might do another reel that could be about, I'm now the financial person and I'm working on the budget today. So it's just a way of, I guess, being creative, bringing in a little bit of that humor and showing that as a sole trader, you wear many hats within the business.
Right. There's a follow-up question which you may be able to expand on. How do some of these content strategies apply when you're a creative sole trader without a team or an office dog? Sure if there's anything more to add.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Like
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's about thinking about what's that personality that you have that you want to showcase, and is there a way that you can still do that people first? So if I go back to this example here, you would still have things that you might do as a sole trader outside of work that could be nice to share. It could be that maybe you might not have an office dog, but do you have another like pet, or does it need to be a pet? It could be, I've seen people use teddy bears, for example, or a mascot that relates to a business. And is there a way that you could bring them into it? And just thinking about who else, I guess, might even be part of your story that might not work directly in the business from a family perspective, but maybe they help you out behind the scenes? Is there a way that you could feature them potentially in it? Yeah, it's, I guess, being creative in the fact of, well, what, like, and it could be just more about you and what you do within that business. We know that the pages that do exceptionally well are often led by the business owner itself being at the face of that particular, I guess, social channel. So maybe just sharing your behind the scenes and the videos about what you're doing in your day-to-day, because people do relate with that.
Right. Thanks, Taihlaura.
So alongside people first and authentic content, this is also where creator collaborations and user-generated content comes into play. So our community is often our best marketer. They're the people who are going to shout out from the rooftops how much they love our product and service for us, and we don't have to do anything for it. They're just going to do it for us. This works because it's more trustworthy than traditional ads. It expands your reach through the creator's audience, and it builds our social proof. So this doesn't have to be done through partnerships, which could be through an influencer of a product or event, but it also could just be our genuine customers posting about what they loved about our product or service and us resharing that, because people, and provided you've got permission, of course, people do resonate with the fact that that's nearly a word of mouth conversation that they're having with a person that's not you just telling them that that product or service is great. That's actually hearing it in somebody else's words. So we do find that the channels who just share the stories that they've been tagged in, that they had, I guess, no partaking in saying that they were paying them as influencers, for example, they're the businesses that tend to thrive, because there's people out there that just want to tell everyone how amazing this product or service is. And tying into, I guess, two of the content pillars that we were talking about before is what they refer to as edutainment. So this is educational and entertaining content. So it's valuable and fun content that is absolutely dominating the algorithms at the moment. So the reason that it works is that it keeps people engaged for longer. It makes your brand memorable, and it provides value without being boring. So some ideas in how this actually works in terms of content is that, did you know style reels? So did you know you can do this, or did you know you could do that? And a lot of the time it ties back to whatever the service or the product is that you're offering. It could be some industry myth busting. So you could say, this is what the statement of the myth is, and then you debunking that and what that actually looks like. Before and after how-tos, some skits or trends adapted with a tip at the end. It's just basically picking maybe even trending audio and captions to make the educational content feel light and scroll friendly. So you might have a really important message that you want to share, and by adding, I guess, some of those more entertaining features into it, we might actually get people to read it and recognize it and actually understand what it is that we're trying to say to them. Are there any questions?
Not at the moment, thanks, Taihlaura.
Perfect. So they're just some examples of, I guess, the type of content that we know is performing really well. But I just wanted to go through some of the formats that I did mention there, so that I can just can go through what it's best for, why it works, the platform it performs best on, and then I can tie it back to some of those examples that I just gave as well. So the first is content type Reels. So this is predominantly used on Instagram and TikTok. And TikTok just call them videos, they don't call them Reels. But we're also starting to see them shift onto Facebook. So these are really good for reach and discoverability. So the reason that it works is that they're short form video, they're highly engaging, and they're favored by the algorithm. So the algorithm, particularly on Instagram, it's going to favor Reels over any other form of content that you're producing. So some of the examples that I mentioned before where this could work quite well are things like quick tips, behind the scenes, trends, or product demonstrations. Image-based content. So again, the best platforms for this are Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. So this is really important from that branding and visual storytelling perspective. So this is where you may be a little bit more aesthetic aligned and make sure that it goes with how you want your brand to be represented out there from an image perspective. It's also really nice when we do have people in them because, again, if people can see a face that they recognize, they're more likely to stop and engage with that image. So really handy for that bite-sized information. Again, some examples of how this works could be those product shots, it could be quotes, flat lays, and then those mood boards, hence why it does really well on Pinterest.
Laura, we've got a couple of questions before you move on. One of our attendees has been in the tourism industry for quite some time, and for many years we have used to ask our guests to head to TripAdvisor to spread the word. Would you say that social media platforms are more relevant for creating that score or reliability, or are clients still looking for the reliability of a star rating?
It's hard to say, to be honest. I think it depends on your target market customer. I don't think that there's some target markets that would utilize social media to check, I guess, that testimonial perspective. I would definitely say that younger demographics certainly would. Whereas that older demographic, you would probably find that they're more looking at your TripAdvisor or your Google reviews to make that decision when they are booking your tourism experience. So it just really does depend who it is that you're trying to attract in that tourism space, and understanding then like what works best for each age group.
Okay. And a second question, for a tour business sole trader, how to use education and entertainment content? Can you give an example?
Could you tell me what your tour business is, and then I could think of a very specific example for your business? Sorry.
No, that's okay. We'll ask that question so you can provide an example. So as soon as I have a response, what sort of tour business it is, I'll let you know.
Thank you. So the other type of content that we're starting to see, I guess, increasingly grow back into the online space are carousels. So these are predominant more on Instagram or LinkedIn, and occasionally Facebook, but they don't display as well. So carousels allow us to have more than one image or video so that people can swipe across and see more information. As you can see in this example, it's a way for us to, I guess, have a longer visual, but split it into sections that actually entices people to scroll across and actually engage with the content that we've got on our post. So Instagram recently changed the way in which carousels work. You're allowed to now have up to 20 as part of your carousel, and it can be a mixture of both imagery and video as part of that. And that seems to work like really well for some accounts. The other feature alongside this is that if you add music to it, they'll actually let it turn up in your real search, so that when people are doing their discovery of different brands, your carousel post can actually show up in that search result just because it's got the music and it gets recognized as a reel for that. So some examples.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
you
Laura.
go.
Sorry about that. We do have an answer on what type of tour. It's, say, for example, day tour to Mount Wellington as an example.
Okay.
So I'm
So
wondering how to use the
so
education and entertainment component as an example.
part of that. Yeah.
Mm.
So maybe you might have, I don't know, an educational fact about Mount Wellington. It might be maybe something to do with the fact, I don't know, let's just say that at the moment I'm just thinking the fact that it would be snowing up there a lot. So is there a way that we could talk about maybe the day where there was the number of meters of snow that it was covered in, and maybe it's the entertaining is actually a picture of you playing in the snow up on Mount Wellington when your tour was maybe going up there once when it was snowing. So it's a way you can say that they're having fun in the snow, but you're also providing an educational fact around the fact of this is what happens when it snows and how your tour actually operates on that day. I'm just trying to think of another example that could help. Maybe it's about what you need to actually pack when you go on your tour to Mount Wellington, for example. So the educational piece is around what you're actually asking them to pack when they come on your tours. But the entertainment way in which you do that could be is you could create a bit more of a fun style, quirky video where you're being a bit more animated with what you pack and deciding yes or no to packing certain items. Hopefully they help in terms of that example of what you're thinking that might get you started around that type of content.
Great, thank you. Laura, we have another question. Did you want to take it now?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yep. So how is it possible to post both a video and a photo in the same post? I see some brands do this, so the videos start playing on a short loop in the post, but there are also photos in the post as well on Facebook.
So it's on Facebook. It's not like where they have sorry, still have a follow-up question. Does it have the video at the top and then images underneath? Because it could be an ad.
Right. Okay. We'll see if we get some more information. Okay. I'll let you know if more info comes in. Thanks to Laura.
No, that's okay. It's a great question because even when it comes to carousels, while Instagram have allowed us to have the imagery and the video all in one, I found that I can actually only do it that way if I post it from the Instagram app. If I try to do it on the Meta Business Suite, it won't let me do it. So I feel like there's certain features that are available to us when we use just the Instagram app versus when we use Meta Business Suite. And then same when it comes to Facebook. You can, when you upload to Facebook, have photos and video at once, but I'm thinking the way that other one was described, it could actually be what they refer to as a collection or a showcase ad type. So it's just, yeah, sorry, just trying to even see what that visually looks like.
Yeah, it's hard without seeing it visually, but there's a follow-up comment. They appear to be organic in the same post.
Okay, so I reckon that they possibly are maybe even posting on Instagram where they're doing the carousel where you can post the videos and the pictures all in the one. And maybe they're also then just sharing across to Facebook so it pulls across to Facebook at the same time.
Okay, thanks to Laura.
I'm happy if that person would like to let us, I'm like happy to take that conversation, have a look with them offline at another time as well.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, Josh will follow up for them and check if they'd like us to do that. That's awesome. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, so with carousels, the type of examples that work best for this are any step-by-steps, multi-part tips or story that you want to share, or even different testimonials about a product or service that you're trying to offer. Stories, now I apologize, this image is a little bit grainy, but stories are that content that only lasts for 24 hours. It disappears after that unless you save it as a highlight. So these are best for Instagram, and Facebook also has now this as a feature. So this is a really quick and easy way to get information out quickly. So if you've got, I guess, time sensitive information about the fact that your business might be shut in the next hour because of an emergency update, it's a good idea to post it to stories. We do know that more people spend time in stories than they do on the actual feed. So it is a good idea to utilize this as a channel. You can also utilize some functionality like in this example where they have a question or a poll. And so you can actually get your audience to engage with you or to leave a question and I guess create follow-ups from that. So it's more that real-time information that we want to get out there quickly, but also as a way for us to engage with our audience.
Laura, we have one of our guests who've raised their virtual hand to ask a question. So Josh might enable their functionality so they can unmute.
No worries.
Mary, I've just enabled your microphone, so you should be able to unmute and ask your question now.
Okay. Are you there with a question for Taihlaura? Okay, it looks like we might be having problems with the unmute functionality.
No
Okay, well,
worries.
we might move on then, Taihlaura, and we can always try again.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
And then the last, I guess, type of post that you might do is just purely text post. So this is going to be more predominant on LinkedIn. And for those of you who might use X, which was formerly Twitter. Now, do note I haven't spoken about X on purpose. It's just not a platform that I have utilized enough to be able to share information with you. It's also not something we use here in Australia enough. So it's not something that I feel, I guess, I want to be able to educate you on if I'm not as familiar with it myself. So text posts on LinkedIn are really good because we can, I guess, showcase our authority and our thought leadership. It's really good for those personal insights and starting conversations. And that might be where we decide that we share what our opinion is on an industry topic or some lessons that we've learned and our tips around that. I do encourage, though, when you are doing these posts, I would suggest to either put a video or an image with it rather than just being text posts, as we do know the algorithm does prefer that style of content, but it is important to note that you can just do text posts on LinkedIn and Facebook if you wish to do so. And that's just an overview of what we've just spoken about there. So in terms of tips for content creation, did that question come back through at all before I continue?
I'll just check whether or not we have the question from, I think it's Mary. No, not so far.
No worries. Well, we'll dive into the next bit, which is more some tips for content creation. So this is where we're going to look at some apps to help you creating that content, how to take great photos, video, writing your caption, and hashtags. But firstly, I thought it would be remiss of me not to talk about AI and how you can start to use this to help with your content creation. So rather than fight AI, I do think it's important that we utilize it in a way that's actually going to help us and our businesses create content. So the way in which that I like to utilize AI when it comes to content creation is to help me maybe draft that first line or that hook line, as I like to refer to it, when I'm writing my actual caption for the post. It could be structuring my post idea. So maybe I've had some thoughts about what it is that I want to say, but I'm not quite sure, I guess, what language I want to say or how I want to say it. So I might say, this is what I want to say in a post. How would you say that? I might, as a way then that generates different angles for me to approach that post. Maybe I've got a call to action within that post, but I'm not happy with the language that I've come up with. So I might ask it to provide me some alternatives. And it's also a good way to say to it, this is my content theme or my content pillar. What are some ways my business, and this is what my business does, what are some ways in which that I could do that and show people? So it's a good idea to build out that content calendar that we spoke about. What I don't like using AI for is copy and pasting a full caption, particularly without editing. For most of us, we would start to recognize when people just use AI to create their social captions. It will use the M dash. It might even repeat the same sentiment a few times. It might have spelling errors because it predominantly will go to American English. So it is important to use it for, I guess, ideas and brainstorming or even refining some wording, but not to write that full caption itself. It also often removes our personality or our voice. So we want to make sure that that's still within that post and we're utilizing language or words or I guess that what we might even call our community or our audience throughout that caption so it actually flows and feels genuine. It doesn't ignore that humor or emotional tone that we've created with our audience previously. Are there any questions around AI and how we can use that to help with content creation? Because I do know that there were quite a number of questions around AI in the questionnaire that you guys were provided as part of tonight's presentation.
There is one question so far, Taihlaura. What app is the best for AI?
Yeah, good question. Look, I have tried a few. We have the paid Gemini in our office, but I actually still prefer ChatGPT. Sometimes I'll even test them and I'll ask them exactly the same question, give it all the same information. And ChatGPT just seems to give me better answers than Gemini does. There are some brilliant paid ones, but I haven't had a good play on any of those.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions around that before I move on?
Not so far, but no doubt we will as we go through. Thank you.
No worries. So I was going to talk now through some apps to help you for that content creation. And one of the apps that I was firstly going to talk about is actually Canva, which is what I've actually designed tonight's presentation in. So Canva is a tool that was designed by some people in Western Australia, and it's about helping people be their own graphic designer. So it allows us to create presentation slides. You can create social media tiles so that they feel on brand and have the look and feel that you're after. You can even add your own branding over here so that you can then select it and then apply that brand kit so that when you're working on the post, it comes up over here. You can upload your own imagery, you can add different elements to posts, but it's just a really helpful tool, I guess, particularly if you're wanting to make like a cover photo for like your tips, for example, on your carousel. You can make sure it's got your logo on it, or it's got that look and feel in terms of your fonts and your colors. And you can play around with it without having to pay for a graphic designer to do that. So it's a drag and drop system, so you can move things to where you want it to be placed. You can change the text and the images on that. Okay, so we'll just move on to the next one. And when we send the slides through, it should hopefully have the image of Canva because it is added into that presentation, but I'm not sure why it's not displaying.
You can see the screen now.
Okay, perfect. So the next app that I wanted to talk through in terms of that content creation is CapCut. So this is particularly useful for helping create reels on Instagram or TikTok. It has a few features, so you can create a new reel where you add all of your own content and you edit and cut and shut it. And it's a bit like Canva where it's drag and drop, so it makes it a little bit easier when you're editing a video. The other feature that I really like is that there are video templates here. And so these video templates are based on, I guess, trending reels or trending ideas. And so you can actually select those and then go and actually put your own information over the top or add your own photos or add your own videos to it. But it gives you a base to get started. CapCut is free. And there is also a paid subscription. It's a little bit like Canva in the sense that while it started with heaps of free features, they're starting to dwindle by the day. So it is getting harder to just stay on that free package, but there is still a lot you can do within that free version that will certainly help elevate your reels when you're creating them and editing them. So this is an app that's super helpful for those of us who might get on screen and completely forget what it is that we actually wanted to say in the video that we're filming. So it's called Big VU. And basically it's a teleprompter app where we can put into it the information that we might want to recall, so that rather than reading a script and looking down, we can actually keep our eyes on the camera the whole time. So you're not memorizing lines, you can read it, you can feel confident and feel a bit more comfortable in front of the camera. And again, that is a free version of that app that you can utilize to trial and see if you like it before actually moving to the paid subscription. In fact, I've never actually had to use the paid one because there's so much you can actually do within the free version of this app. And then the other app that I wanted to mention was ManyChat. So for those of us who may have been on Instagram recently, And we've seen in the caption section where it says send a DM using the word, and they'll particularly, like, they might use a word like winter. And then what it does is it triggers I guess, reply to that person, and that could be that they get like a link to your website, or they get some more information about that product or service that you're offering. So the way in which that's actually done is through this app called ManyChat. And so we actually set up flows so that when people use whatever the key phrase is that you want them to comment on your Instagram post, it automatically sets up the message in which you're going to send to them. You can actually also use it on Facebook and WhatsApp, so that it triggers those different messages to go out, and you just basically set up what happens when, and then what is the result of that. So it's a really good tool for automating that content reply to your customers. In terms of taking images on our phones, so most of us, we're fairly lucky these days that we do have really great quality phones that enable us to be able to take images that actually are, I guess, really good for our social media channels. So there's just a couple of things that you can do to, I guess, ensure that you're making the most out of that phone and actually taking photos that are really clear and engaging for your audience. So the first is to always use natural light. So we find that early mornings or late afternoons tend to work best. If you can't do those things in that time, which most of us sometimes can depend whatever else we've got going on for the day, is see where else in the space that you're in has some more natural light, or is there a way in which we could bring more light into it so it doesn't feel too glowy, but it still feels a bit more natural, and people can see what it is that we're actually sharing with them in that image. On our phone, we also have the thirds grid that we can add. And so this is where we can use the rule of thirds. You can place your subject slightly off center for a balanced shot. So the idea is that your subjects would be in 1/3 of the grid, and then the 2/3 of it would be other things in the rest of that image. But that can help us really, I guess, make sure that that shot is balanced and that they're seeing that core thing that you're wanting them to focus on. An important one is to clear the clutter. So avoid having cluttered backgrounds. Anything that's clean, minimal settings that make the subject stand out is super important. Experiment with angles to add interest. So it could be that you look from the top down, maybe it's a close-up, maybe it's a flat lay where you've taken it from above, but just have a bit of a play what that angle looks like and see if it actually captures the photo in a whole new light that might actually be better. You can also use those phone's grid lines to frame those shots neatly, particularly when you are experimenting with those angles. You can use the tap to focus and adjust brightness before taking the photo, which can really help make that photo be a bit clearer and sharper. Now, this one I really struggle with, but keep the camera steady. So when I'm holding my iPhone, no matter what I do, I'm sure my arms just decide at that moment that they want to shake. So I would encourage you to invest in a tripod or lean against something if you need. We're quite lucky these days. You can pick up a tripod from as little as $10 at Kmart, and that just helps us create that stability. And especially if we are in some of those businesses where it is just us, we can also utilize it to have the timer functionality when it's on the tripod so that it goes off when we need it to. And also, the last thing that I had was to avoid over editing. So something that we're starting to see less of, which is good, is that people aren't over editing photos so that skin tones don't seem natural and the colours aren't true to life.
Laura, for the question, you raised a good point about tripods. So one of our guests has asked if our iPhone is good enough for content creation and when should they look at upgrading to more specialised equipment?
Honestly, your iPhone can take amazing photography. It's just about learning how to utilize some of the features. There's some great Instagram pages that you can go to get some tips from, which I can get those for you after today to be able to share alongside the slides, Kelly.
Right.
Rob in our office, he loves following all these Instagram pages that share different tips on how to utilize your iPhone to take better photos for your business social channels. I just think that we pay a fortune for these phones, and so it's okay to just utilize those. It's just, it depends how, I guess, much going into it, an investment you want to spend. So for me, I've spent a little bit of money and I might have upgraded to get a better microphone when I film Instagram reels so that the audio quality is a little bit better. I did just buy the cheap tripod from Kmart. So it's, I guess, finding that balance on how much are you going to use that equipment that it's worth the investment, especially when there are some really cheap knockoffs that can make it look just as good, and we can learn to utilize our phone features better first. So I'd probably encourage that first before going and buying the equipment.
Thank you.
So alongside photos, we can also take really great videos on our phone. So just some tips for that. The first is to start strong. So the first few seconds are crucial. So you always want to start with something that's eye-catching or intriguing to grab viewers' attention. We want to keep it snappy. So videos that are 15 to 30 seconds for platforms like Instagram or TikTok are ideal. You don't want to have any longer than that because often people get disinterested or bored. It is hard to do though, because sometimes we do have educational content that does take a little bit longer. And that's when we need to decide, is it better to just put it all out in one format and not worry about the fact that it's a minute 30? Or do we break it down into 3 or 4 different 20-second, 30-second bursts and do it as a bit of a series? Where possible, try and stabilize your shot. So hold that camera in both hands or use that tripod. Something that's super important when we are shooting for content on social media is to make sure that we're shooting in the vertical format. So that's actually holding our phone upright, because when it comes to Instagram stories, TikToks, Reels, people are viewing them most likely on their mobile device. So they actually want to see the video upright rather than horizontal. We want to make sure that we're prioritizing good audio. So this is where we make sure that the audio is clear, the background music is low, so that it could not, I guess, overpower the voice that's being heard. But you might also decide that you won't have any background music playing where you're filming the video. You might then decide to add that, and I would suggest doing this, is actually adding that to the reel when you're actually creating it on CapCut or on Instagram itself. It is important to note that some users do watch videos without sound, so it is important to add captions or subtitles, as that's going to make it more accessible and ensure we're getting engagement from all people that might watch that video. I've spoken a lot about Reels tonight, and with good reason. They are a really powerful piece of content that we do need to start making more of when it comes to our social channels. We know it's what people are engaging with. I know they are time consuming to make, so I do understand the hesitation to do them. But as I mentioned before, that raw and authentic reel seems to work best, so don't overthink it. But when it comes to creating reels, this is kind of a bit of a formula that I like to follow. So the first is to keep it short and sharp. So 7 to 15 seconds is a sweet spot for maximum watch through and replays according to Instagram at the moment. So it does often change, but that's the sweet spot. So it doesn't even need to be a really long video for it to actually get people's attention and for them to actually engage with it. We need to hook them fast though. So we need to get people's attention in the first 3 seconds with movement, bold text, or a visual surprise, or they're just going to keep scrolling through their feed. Use the trending sounds. So depending on what's trending at the moment, make sure that we're adding it to the reel, even if it's muted or low volume. It just boosts that discoverability. So when we have the music, the Instagram algorithm favors that, and they're going to prioritize that over everything else. And then people have that choice as to whether or not they want to turn on that audio or just leave it watching it in silence, which is why we suggest adding those captions as well. Now, when it does come to trending sounds, you may find as a business that you don't have as many options as your personal Instagram accounts. And that's just because of licensing agreements, that we can't, as businesses, use some more of those popular songs. What I do suggest as a way around this is to actually switch your Instagram account from business to creator, as a lot of the time we find creators do tend to get a little bit more option when it comes to those sounds in comparison to that business page. Where you need it, add text overlays. This is really important to highlight those key messages for those silent viewers and those quick skimmers so that they can actually see what it is that you're trying to tell them in that reel. Because a lot of the time, if they're watching a reel, they're probably not even reading the content caption that goes with it. They're just watching the reel. So if you've got that text box that actually says what this reel is about, it's going to get their attention and for them to decide whether or not they want to continue watching it or if they're just going to keep scrolling through. Adding that human element is so important when it comes to reels. As I've said many times, people love that behind the scenes, the bloopers and the real life moments. So don't over polish it. Make it human, make it real. People love it. And so those apps that edit the reels, as I mentioned, is CapCut. If you're not a lover of CapCut and you want some alternatives, there is also InShot or the Canva video editor that you can utilize as well to create those reels. So what we've spoken about is more about that visual aspect that goes with our content. So I just wanted to quickly tap into some tips for writing your captions. So this is also for some people probably the hardest bit because they've got their idea of an image or a video that they want to use. They've probably even filmed it and then they sit down and they realize actually you want to have to write another piece of content that goes alongside it. And this is where they are like, oh, I don't want to do this. So just some tips to help you with that. So the first is to consider the language that you're utilizing. So will this message resonate with them? And so is there a particular tone of voice or some words that you can use that reflects your brand's unique style? So these could be words that you utilize across multiple posts all the time that feels unique to you. Write them down in a word bank, brainstorm, so that you've always got them to look at to help, I guess, when you're stuck for what to say, oh, do one of these words work in that place? It's important when you are creating that word bank of words to think of powerful words that evoke emotion or action that will help make that caption stand out. Similar to videos, we want to keep it concise. We have exactly 8 seconds to grab people's attention when it comes to content. And particularly because if you're on Instagram or TikTok, they're going to be captured by the visual element first. Our caption is the next piece. So we want to keep them engaged on actually reading what we've had to say. Whereas on Facebook, we want to make sure that our hook line, for example, in our text part of the caption, actually gets people's attention because that's the first thing they're going to see over the visual content. So we want to make sure that we're keeping it concise and we've got that hook line ready to get people in to read more, particularly if we do have a longer caption format that we need to share alongside that information. Where possible, ask a question to help spark a conversation and encourage that engagement on that post. Really important, focus on one clear goal or call to action. So quite often I see captions and it's very unclear what it is that you're actually wanting to talk about or what's that action that you want people to take next if it is a little bit more of a salesy post. So try not to have too many ways in which people can go. Just make it really clear that this is the direction that you wanted them to take with this piece of content. Don't be afraid to use emojis. These can add personality and make your caption more visually appealing. Just be, I guess, mindful not to overdo it. So we often find that these can be good to break up text or emphasize key points, as we don't often have, well, you can't utilize dot points on a caption, where you can utilize an emoji to represent that dot point. I guess the reason I say not to overdo it is if you have ever tried to write a caption with AI technology, you will notice that they well and truly overuse the emojis. So it can be a sign for people to actually pick up that that post is made through AI. So we don't want people to think that if you are actually creating that content from scratch. And most importantly is to proofread. So spelling or grammatical errors can make your brand seem less professional. So a really quick proofread can help ensure your message is clear and polished. Again, this is something that I might even utilize AI for. I might say, is this correct in Australian English and grammar? I'll post the text that I was going to utilize in my caption just to double check that it is correct. So it's a good way for us to be able to do it. Or if you are using Chrome as a tool, you could also download the tool Grammarly as a Chrome extension, and that will automatically look at your grammar and spelling while you're typing your content. Are there any questions around tips for writing your caption?
Not so far, Taihlaura, unless someone's got a question to pose. No, it doesn't look like it at the moment.
Beautiful. We'll keep moving on then. So some content engagement tactics. So this is all about what can we do once we've put our content out there, or we're looking to put our content out there. What are some things that we can do on our social media channels to help engage with our community and our audience, and to get them to see that we are being, I guess, active in their eyes on social media? So the first is to look at scheduling your posts. So when you've created your content, you might decide that you sit down once a week or once a month and you, I guess, batch your content, which is completely fine to do. Most when we are time poor people, it makes it so much easier if we can schedule our posts, or at least schedule our call posts, and allow for us to then just add stories that are more in the moment as they appear, or maybe even move things if world events happen and we need to maybe put up something that's more time pressing as a post. So the way in which we would schedule our posts is to look at what's considered the right time to post when our audience is online. And so the way that we do that is to check our insights to see when our audience is most active, and actually schedule that post to go out then, because then we know we're going to get more visibility on the particular content that we've created. When we've spent so much time putting our content together, it is nice if we know that people are actually going to see it. So if we're putting it out at the right time, we can feel a little bit more confident that more people are going to see it. I like to utilize the scheduling tools that are built into the apps themselves. So for Facebook and Instagram, I use the Meta Business Suite. For Pinterest and LinkedIn and TikTok, I just use their intrinsic business systems. However, for some people, they like to manage it all in the one system. So that's when you can look at purchasing third-party apps such as Later, Buffer, Hootsuite, where it lets you do all of your content scheduling within the one platform. After we've posted, you can consider sharing to stories, particularly if you've posted on Instagram. So stories are important to share, but it is a good idea to make sure that we're not just resharing it. So make sure we add some context, or even add a comment, a question or opinion to get your audience interested and ready to find out more what's actually happening on that post. You'll know within stories, if you are familiar with it, they do have some features where you can add a sticker and it might say tap to learn more, or you can find out more here. So you can add that over the top of it, so it entices them to actually click through and see what it is that you have to say. But I would still also suggest to add a comment, question or opinion above that, just to get your audience more engaged with it. It's also important, once you do post, if somebody posts a comment on your page, and it might be a question that you may need to answer, or maybe it's just simply praising the content that you've created, try and engage with that, whether it's liking it or commenting back to them, so that it's not just a one-way conversation. It makes it feel more personable, and like you can see and acknowledge the fact that they've engaged with your pieces of content. I know this can be really tricky when it does come to negative comments, and that might be when you then decide, is it worth actually commenting back in this instant? Is it going to add more fuel to the fire? Or is it actually a chance for me to potentially educate and turn this negative opinion around? So it's sometimes a bit of a balancing act to work out what's the best thing to do. And sometimes if you're not sure and you leave it for 5 or 10 minutes while you're pondering that thought, you might even find that another community member jumps in and actually helps defend your business for you, so that you don't have to do anything and you can just let them take the reins, which is always the dream of what we want to happen when those negative ones do appear. The other thing to consider is commenting meaningfully on others' content. So this is where you will actually interact and engage as your business on Instagram or Facebook. So I'm not saying just go and like and comment on everything. I want you to actually go and engage with the content that other businesses that are or creators are putting out there that actually is valuable or that you do actually like. So it could be that you like their content or you leave a thoughtful comment that adds value to their post. As I say, it's a great way to support peers, local businesses, or customers. And it just helps boost your visibility and builds rapport with your audience because they can see you're being active and out there in the community. Using interactive features in your posts, so particularly on stories, this is a very important feature. So this is where you can add polls, sliders, and Q&As that are quick, low-effect ways for people to interact with you. If you use them regularly, you'll stay top of mind and learn more about your audience. So I see this done really well when businesses put a Q&A box up asking people to send in the questions that they want answered. And then over the coming days or weeks, they actually might create reels that actually answer some of those questions. So it's kind of a way for them to also get some content that might be more educational to actually answer what their community want to hear about. And I think that's a really clever way to engage your audience and hear what it is that they actually want to learn more about through your social channels. Sharing community content. So if a community member has purchased your product or they've loved your service and then they've decided to share it, to scream it from the rooftops on their own social channels, it's always nice to acknowledge that you've seen that content and show them that you appreciate that they've done that. And so you can either repost that user-generated content when people tag us to our stories. It's a great way for us to be able to get constant traffic on our stories and show that we are being active within them. If you get a tag of a fantastic photo and you think, oh, I want to utilize that in the future by, making note of that user-generated content, you could also then utilize that image in the future by getting permission off them and making sure that we credit them for the image or the video when we do go to repost it with our own captions. We know that people love that 5 minutes in the spotlight. So if there's a way in which we can do that and they're happy for us to do that, it's a good thing for our businesses to consider doing. So a question that I often get asked is around hashtagging on posts and if it's worth it or not. So I just wanted to have, a little quick conversation here around the usage of hashtags on posts. So typically hashtags work best on Instagram or LinkedIn or Pinterest. And the reason that they work is that they help us get our content seen. So using them on Instagram, it helps us categorize our posts and it makes it easier for our target audience to find you. So what we are finding is that when people are searching for certain, products or services or things that they might have seen, they're putting in, keywords or key phrases. And that's where your hashtags can come into play around that keyword that they're searching for, because your post might then appear as part of that search result. So it is important, though, when we do utilize hashtags, that we're only using ones that are relevant to that post. So we don't want to have what they refer to as hijacking hashtags. So this is where we're just using hashtags to get traffic, but our post has nothing to do with it, or we have nothing as a business to do with whatever that hashtag is about. The magic number of hashtags changes all the time. But at the moment, 3 to 5 hashtags is often the sweet spot. So basically, I would encourage you to experiment to find what works best for you and your business, and try and keep them, looking clean in the captions, and how many, work best for you. In terms of where you add those hashtags, it's completely up to you if you add them at the bottom of the caption or as a comment on your post in the first comment. There's research for pros and cons on both ways, and they basically have drawn the same conclusion that it doesn't matter where you put it, it works in the same way. So do whatever you prefer from a stylized perspective, and whatever's easier for you. If you're scheduling your posts, it's probably easier to actually put your hashtags in the caption, unless you're scheduling on Instagram, for example, where you can also now schedule your first comment to go up on that post. Something to, I guess, consider that as of December last year, Instagram users can no longer follow hashtags. So what that means is they can't just follow a hashtag feed of hashtag social media, for example, and then see all of the posts that come a part of that. So Instagram actually got rid of that feature. And the reason for that is that they referred to the tactic as growth hackers. So this is where they added relevant trending hashtags to their posts in hopes of expanding their reach. So by removing the ability to follow hashtags, Instagram is now trying to help make users make sure users are served content they're actually interested in. So that's why we want to make sure that the hashtags that we use actually relate back to what we're posting about, so that when people are doing that search, they're actually finding information out that's going to answer their question or their problem that they're looking for. Now, it is important when we do utilize hashtags to have a look at if they are used or not, because some hashtags can actually be banned. So it's a good idea just to tap a hashtag and just see if there are other people that are utilizing that hashtag. If you can see that nothing shows up, it actually is likely permanently or temporarily banned. So an example of a hashtag that's banned, which makes no sense, is actually the hashtag Valentine's Day. So any post that then used the hashtag Valentine's Day was actually not shown by the algorithm because they didn't want to show posts that prioritize that hashtag. So it actually was damaging for the businesses who use that hashtag in their posts. And then lastly, it is important to consider having a hashtag for branding purposes. So by no means do we actually own a hashtag as a business, but we can utilize it to encourage our customers to use that when they're posting about us, or maybe to reinforce a brand message. So make sure that we're using those hashtags in our own posts so that it encourages our customers to use those hashtags on their posts about your business. Now, if you are stuck on what hashtags to use for your post, there is a free tool that you can use called the hashtag research tool by Hootsuite. So this will actually generate, I guess, a bunch of different hashtags for you to utilize with your post. You just fill out the fields here, and then it will generate the hashtags for you that best go with that post. So just something to consider if you are feeling a little bit stuck for hashtags. The other thing that can be really handy to utilize is sometimes AI, as they will have a look at what is trending and what might be worth it based on that content that you've put into the system. So the next thing to consider is cross-promotion on your posts. So there's a few ways in which a business can cross-promote. So this could be using influencers or partnering with other businesses or giveaways. What I mean by partnering with other businesses too is it's how you can both, I guess, utilize what your core service is and showcase that to people. So a great example is that a local walking company could actually collaborate with a local company like Stallard, who sell video cameras. And so the partnership not only showcases the camera quality of one of the cameras that they sell, but it also highlights the walking experience, which could then inspire potential customers to book. So it's about working with each other on your strengths and bringing them together for the greater benefit of both of your businesses. So there's two ways in which you can cross-promote. And these are probably two of the most common ways that we're starting to see. So the first is through tagging. So this is where we actually add the @ symbol to the post and we tag that business name in it. So you can see in the example here, they've put their own text and then watch this week's video. They've used a hashtag, which is from a branding perspective. And then they've actually tagged in the page in which you can go, or the app, or the page about the app that they're actually talking about. So when we tag a business, it's just putting the @ symbol and actually tagging them in it. It doesn't actually mean it goes to that person's page. They just might receive a notification to say that their business has actually been mentioned, and then they can go and view that piece of content. The second way, which is starting to become more popular, particularly on Instagram, is what they refer to as collaborating. So this is where you would have one person who's potentially put that piece of content together on their page, And they talk about both of those businesses' offerings, so particularly popular when it comes to influencers and even that business partnership that I was speaking about before. And when you ask, I guess, a business to collaborate with you, if they review that and accept it, it actually goes across both of your pages on your actual news feed itself. So it's a great way to, I guess, make sure you're reaching both of your audiences and sharing that this collaboration has taken place. Are there any questions on any of those engagement features before we move on to the last bit of tonight?
Not so far, thanks to Laura.
Perfect. Well, we'll move on to the very last bit. So yeah, we're just looking at tracking and how it's important to actually understand what content your audience actually cares about, and then to waste less time guessing. So the best place that you can actually do this is on the insights of the actual apps itself. So for Facebook and Instagram, you can actually do this within the Meta Business Suite. Similarly, TikTok and Pinterest also have their own versions of this. But basically, the things that we want to look at are some engagement metrics. So what does the likes, comments, and shares on posts? If we start to notice that certain content themes have a really good, strong, I guess, terms of likes, comments, or shares, it's going to say that that type of content resonates with that audience. If we're seeing that people are saving things, it also shows that they want to refer back to it. So particularly if we are doing those how-tos or those tip style pieces of content, if we can see that people are saving it, we know that they're going back to it and referring to it. So we want to keep that type of content up. And then we also want to make sure that our engagement rate is a strong indicator of our audience connection. So the way that we do that is total interactions divided by total followers times by 100. And we obviously want to get that closer to that 100%. Some audience insights. So it's always good to look at making sure that we understand our target audience who is actually watching our content. So have a look at the demographics. Who are they? What is their age, gender, location, and interests that actually they are engaging with? What are their peak times of activity? So this is important when we want to understand when they're online so that we can schedule our content for. And are we gaining or losing followers over time? So if you decide to start a whole new content strategy and you start losing all these followers, you can possibly assume that there's something with that content that they're not engaging with, or maybe you're just actually getting rid of the people who don't actually get who your business is, and they're not the people that actually you need to champion your brand, and that's okay too. As I mentioned before, when you can see your top performing posts, you can identify those themes, formats, and topics that work best. And we can also see what video length of time our audience prefers. So you can see what that watch time looks like, how long they're watching the video for, and how much of the video they're actually completing. So we can see percentages in 25% increments as to how much of that video they're actually completing. Again, if you're then sending people from your social media channels to your website, you can actually look at, well, what are the percentage of people clicking links in our posts or our bio to actually go to our website? How many people are even going to our profiles just to look at the information or get a bit of an overview of our business? And then through Google Analytics, we might also look at our website traffic and see how many people are actually coming from social media to our website, as they'll come through as a referral source traffic. So just to finish up tonight, I thought I would set you all a challenge for the week. So I thought that you could all go away and create one short reel, post a poll or a question in your stories, comment on 5 relevant accounts that are genuine for you and your business to be commenting on, perhaps prepare 1 week's worth of content and find 2 new hashtags for your next post, whether that be through looking at what hashtags are available through the Hootsuite tool, or maybe even using AI to help you. So it's just a way to encourage you to actually use some of the things that we've learned tonight and start putting them into action. Now, before we go though, I will allow time for questions. And I'll stop sharing and come back on the screen for this.
So either the Q&A function or raise your virtual hand, whichever works. Before we wind up, Taihlaura's happy to answer some questions. Must have been so thorough, Taihlaura. Looks like there's no questions coming in.
I am conscious that I have run us right to the time too, so I possibly am interrupting all of your evenings for far too long, and I do apologise about the technical outage there. They've just got to love technology and when the internet decides to fail us.
It's all good. It happens, unfortunately. It looks like no questions. So thank you, Taihlaura. So many good things that have been covered and lots for everyone to think about. Or actually, we do have a last minute question here. Let's see, for a tiny business, how useful are sponsored Instagram ads?
Good question. I guess it depends for a tiny business what that strategy looks like in terms of your ad. Are you just trying to get awareness out there, or are you actually wanting to generate more leads or sales? And in that sense, it can be a really good tool to make more people learn about you and what you actually have to offer. And it might be that you might start off on a smaller budget scale rather than throwing everything into it.
Excellent. I've got actually a couple of other questions that could just come in. As an event host, should I tag all the businesses involved?
Yes, no, good question. I mean, it's so hard in that event space because you do feel like that you're always getting tagged and things. I mean, if you tag them, at least shows that you've thought about them and you are appreciating what they bring to that event, and then they get the option as to whether or not they then want to like or comment on it. If you're an event and maybe you're running it with multiple event partners, that's actually where I would suggest even considering a collaboration post so that it goes across all of your feed networks and taps into all of their audiences as well as your own.
Great, thank you. And another question, how accurate is the time on Facebook that posts are active?
I assume we're referring to the active times button that appears on the Meta Business Suite. Honestly, I would take that with a bit of a grain of salt. Now, the reason I emphasize that is I manage six different businesses, lots of social accounts, and all of them say the same active time. And I know that that is not true when I go and do my own look through the content at times that have worked well for that particular business's content. So I just think that it kind of groups certain things together, and it normally says 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. is the ideal time. So just have a look through your own, data there through the content times that you've posted and see when you're typically getting better reach, and see if it actually aligns with the active time that Facebook is suggesting.
Great advice. Thanks, Taihlaura. Do we have any last questions? It doesn't look like it. Well, thanks again, Taihlaura, for your time. We'll email the slides out to everyone who attended tonight, and we'll also send a really short survey. We'd love to hear your feedback and ideas for future events. So again, thank you everyone for your time. Appreciate it, and we hope you enjoyed the evening.